With the ever-growing list of defenders being injured for Arsenal, it is time for some of the squad players to step up. And one of the players that I am backing is Myles Lewis-Skelly, who has played considerable minutes in the last few games and is clearly one of Arteta's favourites to come into that left-back position. In this video, we're going to go through exactly why he is already ready for first-team football and why he potentially is better than Zinchenko already. So let's get into it. Now, while a lot of the youngster talk around Arsenal is obviously about nwaneri, and I've spoken about it, I believe it is down to positional need. I think we need a creative player in there when Saka wasn't there, and because he is a more attacking player, you can definitely see the excitement there. However, that doesn't take anything away from Myles Lewis-Skelly, who has equally been given big opportunities by Arteta this season, and in the last two games have come on in very important moments for the team when they need to defend a lead and see out a result. And what potentially is more noticeable is the fact that Myles Lewis-Skelly is coming on in a position where other players could as well. There's been no secret that players like Kiwior and Zinchenko have been on the bench alongside him, and he is the person that is preferred to come on, usually in that left back position, over Zinchenko guaranteed, and maybe over Kiwior depending on the situation. Now, because Myles Lewis-Skelly is a defensive midfielder by trade, he definitely has a lot of good on the ball qualities, and I think that is the major thing that really points out when you watch him. He is so calm on the ball that his passing is very good, and there's that one moment against Liverpool later on in the game where they close him down and try to pressure him to give the ball away in the final third, and he does really well to keep it under pressure and put the ball through to Rice to make a run to get Arsenal on the break. This is just an example of his intelligence and how good he is on the ball, and some of the smart decision making which see him get into the team over players like Zinchenko. Now, I actually think in the positions that he has come on are not necessarily a favourable one for him right now. I do think he is a much more aggressive fullback than some other players and does prefer going forward in other situations. While he's not a bad defender, probably better than Zinchenko, why Arteta trusts him. But if you look at his average positions in the Liverpool game when he came on and in the Bolton game which he started, he is very far up the pitch. He wants to attack, he wants to be on that inside aim, having the chance to invert but also being able to create width, and due to his timings, I think he is much better going forward right now in passes through the line. And we saw the pass that he did against Bolton through the lines, and that is something that he wants to do even more, being able to produce brilliant on the ball skill like Zinchenko did and come into midfield a lot for the team. Now, this is great because it gives Arsenal a source to get out a lot of the time. We had Saka coming deeper on the right side, and Lewis-Skelly was getting into them positions to get us forward in a left back role, something you would see Calafiori do, but it's good that he can do that at such a young age as well. But more importantly, I think, is how calm he is on the ball. There's a lot of chances where the ball comes to him in tight situations, and it's not only the one we mentioned earlier, but there's many times where you can see the on the ball quality and the amount of confidence he has. He's not afraid to keep the ball in very many times and will wait for the right pass to become available, and he usually has the great weight of ball, be able to put the ball through for someone like Martinelli in the wing, but also to put us through in the midfield to get us on the break. And this is something that is rare for 18-year-olds to have because it shows a lot of composure in tight situations, which are very important. Now, against Liverpool, he came on and had to defend against Salah, and I think he actually did a really good job. He knew when to keep tight to Salah when he's a bit deeper, and also stay off him so he doesn't turn you within the box. He was actually better when Kiwior wasn't coming over, but Kiwior kept making these runs and being close to Lewis-Skelly, and although I think their positionings sometimes were a bit confused, I think Kiwior hasn't played a lot for centre-back for Arsenal. I think overall, with a better system, better players and more time, he would understand that a lot more, but it's quite clear there's a defensive effort there. And in that game, he only had a select few touches in the game, but he made 2 passes into the final third and still made some defensive recoveries and actions, so he was getting involved and trying to put his body on the line like he has before. Now, I think there is 2 major reasons why he should play though over someone like Zinchenko, and one, I think, is his decision making, which we have briefly spoken about, but 2, I think it's just how he uses his body in great ways. He isn't the tallest guy, he isn't the biggest guy, but to say this guy lacks physicality, I actually think is quite untrue. Maybe from an actual physical standpoint, he does, and he can get bullied sometimes, but he does have a brilliant ability at using his body in the best way to keep the ball. More like Gabriel Jesus-esque, and nwaneri also has got it as well. But there's many times he can just shift the ball away from players by just being calm under pressure, but also just putting his body in a position where it's hard for the player to get around to get the tackle in. Now, against Bolton, a lot of the time he was just taking the mick out of the players coming towards him, and they was getting pressed, and there's 3 or 4 players that kept going at him, and he kept keeping the ball easily under pressure and being able to win a free kick or pass it through the middle. This difference of being calm on the ball and composed, and from a youngster that's usually trying to prove himself maybe a bit too much or doesn't have this ability, is a real game changer at the highest level. And this is something I think Lewis-Skelly has proved to Arteta that he can do, and that's why he's given considerable minutes. And his passing ability on his left foot is very impressive, which I do think gives us an attacking edge if we can get him into games where he might have to play a bit more with the ball. He's only really come on in the Prem against teams he has to defend against, but against Bolton he was making so many passes and so much creative action within that game, where he made 6 passes into the final third and made 55 out of 61 passes overall. This, and also how he uses his body, makes him very good in a duel. In that game he won 7 and lost 4 duels, but against Liverpool he also won 1 against Salah and lost none. And despite him obviously not being the most physical player, the fact he's winning duels shows that he knows what to do with his body. And I also think there's been a lot of trust from the players that really give Nwaneri and Myles Lewis-Skelly, more importantly, a lot of confidence. I think that the reason why these guys have been getting minutes this season is because they are familiar with the squad and the team do trust him. We've spoken about some of the passes that Lewis-Skelly does under pressure, which are really good to get us through, but a lot of the team deserve credit as well. People like Raya trust him, people like Rice trust him to keep the ball under pressure, and I think that's one of the major things. If you have that sort of trust with the players, you will improve indefinitely. And I do think on the ball, in terms of ability, he is clearly a lot more talented than someone like Kivior, and I do think as a one-on-one defender he could almost be as good as these players right now. I think you'd rather play Lewis-Skelly and let him develop than playing someone like Zinchenko, who we all know is a liability. If teams think that Lewis-Skelly is a liability and they go to press him and he ends up passing the ball through, then Arsenal could easily get away, which has happened a few times. And I honestly think this guy can be ready to start for the first team anytime soon. Now overall it is still early days. Myles Lewis-Skelly has only played around 100 minutes this season so far, and he hasn't got considerable game time, but with the injuries of Calafiori and now maybe Gabriel on that left side, there's only so much room where Timber can fill in and Kivior can as well. So Lewis-Skelly looks like he will be getting the shout soon because Zinchenko isn't looked to be favoured. I also think the game against Preston in the week is going to be another example of where he starts potentially in left back, but you could also try him in midfield if you want to try something there. I think it is quite clear that he is ready, and I do think that there is not as much hype on him until the Liverpool game, but now people are starting to realise that really Lewis-Skelly should be in the same category as Nwaneri. Now I've said it's because of positions. I think right now it's the time for Lewis-Skelly to step up because we also need that position for players to come through. And at the start of the season I actually made a video about Lewis-Skelly before he'd ever played a minute of professional football, talking about how I think his role can be used in the new Zinchenko role, and in pre-season it looked like we were trying to work to that. And that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I never really thought it would get this far, and Zinchenko actually started the first game of the season after being good in the friendly against Leverkusen. Now fortunately this is nothing bad against Zinchenko, but I do think we have got a big team for the defensive monsters, and I know Lewis-Skelly doesn't really fit that mould, but defensively and duel wise he can be up there, and I think Arteta does want to develop these players slowly but still give them minutes if they deserve it. And I think he's been very impressed by Lewis-Skelly in his minutes he's come on, and now he's come on in 2 big games in a row, Shakhtar in the week when we needed to hold out for that lead, and now Liverpool. I can easily see him starting more games in the future. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you like this video please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.